Did you eat breakfast this morning?
Did I have breakfast? I had a Go Macro bar.
Cool.
Yeah. Dang it! Come on.
You know what time it is?
It's 11:15.
Cool.
You can ask me what I'm doing.
How was last night?
What was last night?
Just how was it?
Good.
Cool. Sorry. Go. What are you doing?
I was gonna do a bit. I was gonna do a bit about gambling.
No, sorry. What are you doing?
Oh man, I missed my 19-leg parlay.
What things needed to hit? Number one,
a car into me after losing this parlay. That's what needed to hit. Let me tell you, man, I'm losing my veritable butt here. I don't know. I didn't think of anything funny.
Are you serious?
Yeah,
That can't be real.
I just abandoned the bit. Folks, we got a great episode for you.
He said, we need to film an intro. I have a funny bit. Oh, my God.
Then I panicked. I was like, well, he's not asking me what I'm doing.
Don't turn off the episode because this one's a real fun one.
It's a real fun one.
We got David Hill. He's an author and journalist. You may have seen his most recent work in the Rolling Stone. It's an incredible, it's super thorough read of the current state of the online sports betting industry, and it's fascinating. And he knows the stuff. He's going to explain. He's going
to teach you how to win at gambling, sports gambling. Yes, even you, a veritable idiot, can gamble on sports and win big. This episode is sponsored by Prize Picks, DraftKings, FanDuel, and who else? MGM Bet, Caesars Palace Bet.
Just the NBA, the NFL,
the NBA,
NCAA,
the NBA, the NFL, PGA,
WTA.
Yeah. Everybody's paying us exorbitant amounts of money to promote gambling. But no, this one's Merry Christmas, first of all, to everybody, because this is coming out on Christmas, right?
Is it on Christmas?
Or not on Christmas,
maybe
the day after Christmas.
Yeah.
So you're probably sitting there cozied up with your mug of hot chocolate, and I hope you're not betting on football or something like that. But anyway, let's kick off the episode, shall we?
Welcome, everybody. We have a very special guest on today. His name is David Hill. He's a journalist, writer. His first book is called The Vapors. But more importantly, he wrote you might have seen it. It had a little moment on Twitter for sure. In Rolling Stone, all about the gambling industry, the online gambling industry, and the possible bubble. David Hill is with us. Thanks so much for joining us.
It's really my pleasure. Thanks a lot for asking me to come on.
But so you're kind of the perfect person to have on to talk about this. It's definitely, this gambling stuff is definitely in our wheelhouse of the show. Neither of us are really gamblers. Let's talk about it. I saw, I've seen the articles about, the rise of all these, or mainly these two companies, but I didn't quite know how to cover it, and you seem like the perfect person. You've got. Can you talk a little bit about your history with gambling a little bit, and maybe hot springs and all that stuff?
You mentioned my book that I wrote, The Vapors. It's about this place that I'm from, Hot Springs, Arkansas, which is kind of a weird town. I mean, it's a national park. So if anybody knows it at all, they either know it because it's like the smallest national park in America, or they know it because it's where Bill Clinton is from. But once upon a time, Hot Springs was world famous. It was really like Las Vegas before there was a Las Vegas. It was America's gambling capital and sort of America's first real spa town. And I grew up there. Gambling had been run out of Hot Springs by around, 1968, 69, but it sort of still was a part of the culture of the town, even when I was growing up there and well into the 90s. And so I grew up in this town full of, gamblers, carnies, grifters, I mean, it was really a part of my my DNA, I guess. And so I've always been around this stuff well before, 2019, when now we are all surrounded by it, whether we like it or not. So that's kind of my perspective. Is I think I say in the story that I was literally like the proverbial frog in the boiling pot of water. Like it, I've been around gambling so long that I didn't really notice when it had really become a big part of the zeitgeist.
Right. And you gamble a little bit yourself, right?
Unfortunately, I can't help but gamble a little bit myself. Yeah,
Are you good at it?
for sure. I think so, but I will say, I would say that I'm only good at it because of what I've learned covering it as a writer. By hanging around with a lot of professionals for many years now, and trying to just glom onto learn whatever I can from them. I think I've become better at it.
Yeah. What do you gamble? Do you gamble on sports? Are you playing cards or what?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's this old there was this poker player back in the 70s named Puggy Pearson, and he used to say that he would play any man from any land at any game that they could name at and I kind of feel the same way. Like I like to play games, so in addition to gambling, like I play chess, I play a lot of board games, like I'm really into games. And so gambling is just another way to keep score and make things interesting. So I'm happy to gamble with anybody, anything, even if I'm taking the worst of it, just because it's fun.
Holy shit, man. Hey, you want to play some darts? I'll kick your ass at darts. I see you got a poster behind you. I'm actually pretty good at darts.
This poster behind me is interesting. This is my grandfather. He traveled with the carnival, and he was a carny. He was like a con artist, and the game that he ran in the carnival was a dart game that was like a rigged gambling dart game. It was called Razzle. That they called it the Razzle or Razzle Dazzle, and it was a game where you would throw darts at this board and you would get paid off based on where your dart landed. But it was a complete hustle, and you could really never win, and the math really worked against you. And so I spent years trying to find, the equipment that they use in this game, and I found this eventually, and that's what that is. So yeah, let's play darts, man.
Wow, awesome. Yeah, I'm actually probably going to lose. I don't know shit about gambling.
I think you might get taken.
Yeah, I'll probably get taken.
I mean, that's a good spot to start. So the article it's so great, but it really, because a lot of the articles I've seen really focus on where we are now, but you really kind of go into the history of gambling, and I was wondering if you could kind of talk about that a little bit. I didn't quite realize how ingrained sports gambling was into the country and just American sports culture in general.
Yeah. No, gambling and sports are completely linked from the very beginning. I mean, the first sports in America were literally like two dudes like running, you know what I mean? Like in a race that people would bet on. And they would, if somebody was super fast, he would like travel around to they would, gamblers would take this fast dude around to like bet on him. And then, there was horse racing, of course. There was boxing, prize fighting, which was also, these fights were set up to gamble on. These were the earliest sports in early America, but also cockfighting was a big sport in early America, like in George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, like they would cockfight, and this was another thing that people did to bet on. So the whole notion of sports, in early America really was built around opportunities for people to get together and wager. Gambling is also a big part of American history because before, the early Americans didn't want to pay taxes. So they created lotteries to pay for everything because in a way it was a way to have a tax that wasn't a tax, right? Kind of do these like weird raffles where everybody would pitch in some money and they'd give the winner some prize, and then the rest of it they would use to build Harvard University or something. So
awesome.
It's really truly always kind of been a part of the fabric of the early days of America. But sports evolved out of this, and even like modern sports like football, the sport of football, the earliest owners in football were all bookies and gamblers who started these teams really as an excuse to bet with each other. These are guys who made a lot of money booking baseball or betting baseball. And gambling on baseball really evolved because horse racing was the big sport in America. And there was this sort of anti-gambling wave that went around the country that led all these state governments to ban horse racing. And so as soon as they banned horse racing, all the bookies showed up at the ballpark and started taking bets on baseball. And so that was the beginning of baseball's popularity in America, was when they shut down horse racing and people realized, hey, we can bet on this ridiculous game over here too. And they all, that way it took off. And so you could just sort of track this throughout, all the way up in the middle of the last century, that sports grew in popularity in America when people could bet on them and faded in popularity when people couldn't.
Wow. So for those of us who don't know exactly what I excuse me for going super elementary with this, but like, what is a bookie exactly? What does a bookie do? How does a bookie make money? A sports book.
Sure. Well, bookie short for bookmaker. And then, the idea was that they were making there would be this book, this like ledger book that you would keep all of the different various bets that people were making in it. So that was the book that, the bookmakers would make book. They would set all the odds on whatever the event was that they were making book on. And then they would take and pay off bets on all these prices that they set. I mean, in a weird way, a bookmaker is kind of like a trader on Wall Street. You know what I mean? I mean, they're building a market. They're market makers, right? They're saying, here's the price that I'm offering, come and get it. And then they adjust the price as people either take it or leave it. So that's what a bookie is in theory. There's this kind of old canard that the way bookies make money is by charging what's known as a vig, right? That you would have to bet $110 to win 100. And so that extra 10% is kind of the bookie's commission or the vig. That really hasn't been the case for a long time, if it ever was. I mean, the real way that bookmakers make money is by, being on the right side, having exposure on the right side of a bet versus the wrong side. And so it's really fascinating the more you learn about this to see the real parallels between the gambling economy and the gambling markets and the stock market and the financial markets, which are considered far more legitimate in American society, but also are like this sort of important underpinning of our entire economy. Yet we have this sort of bizarro version of it that exists in the gambling world that essentially mirrors it.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's probably a good place to kind of talk about how we got here. Because for most of my life, most of our lives, it wasn't that easy to place a sports bet or gamble. It was siloed off in certain parts of the country, mainly Nevada. But all that has changed very rapidly in the last, I guess, 5-6 years. And so maybe you could explain how we got to this insane point.
Yeah, there's something to do with I've been learning about this extensively the last couple weeks, but my understanding is that it was illegal everywhere except for Nevada up until 2009, at which point New Jersey fought and petitioned the Supreme Court or something to legalize sports gambling, and it wasn't until 2018 when that finally got reversed. And up until that point, these online gambling websites like DraftKings were capitalizing on fantasy sports, which is like a weird loophole. Can you speak to just all of that? Hey, gang, we want to take a quick break to talk a little bit about subscriptions. You know, this episode's all about money, and losing money. You know, one way to lose money, forgetting about losing track of old subscriptions that you didn't know you had anymore. Am I right?
You're right, pal.
I mean, I can name a few that I can't name by name for legal purposes, but boy, oh boy, these things are just designed to suck you dry.
That's why this Christmas, I'm thankful for Rocket Money.
Yeah, I'm thankful. It's not Thanksgiving, but you can be thankful.
You can be thankful on Christmas. It's one of the most important times to be thankful.
They say you can be thankful year-round.
But for Christmas, I'm thankful for Rocket Money.
Why, pal?
Because
it saves you money?
Yes, because I'm the type of guy who, you put everything's a free trial now, and they say, oh, just put your credit card down, and then you're responsible for canceling it. And I go, okay, sure. Forget about it.
Yeah.
Things I don't even use. Now I got it all in one place. Rocket Money's helped me cancel those things, save money.
That's right, buddy. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, and it monitors your spending and thereby helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. That's right. We love growing our savings. And it's not just us who use it. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features.
What are you going to do with your $740?
I'm gonna throw it into a very risky parlay on.
I'm gonna buy my entire family Christmas presents
on Taiwanese badminton. Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. And listen. Even if you see a subscription that you don't want anymore and you don't feel like dealing with all the rigmarole of canceling it, guess what? Rocket Money will even try to negotiate your lower bills for you. They automatically scan your bills to find opportunities to save, and then you can ask them to negotiate for you. How awesome is that? They'll deal with customer service so you don't have to. They'll cancel stuff so you don't have to. So check this out. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/BAES today. That's rocketmoney.com/BAES. rocketmoney.com/BAES.
Yeah, and I love how you both pronounce Nevada differently. That's great.
Yeah.
You guys kind of represent the divide in America here.
He's from the
It's
West
true.
Coast. I grew up on the East Coast.
So it's true that that it was illegal to bet on sports everywhere in America other than Nevada prior to this decision, which is known as the PASPA decision. That doesn't mean it was hard to make a bet on sports. In fact, it was pretty easy actually if you were looking for it. It was a lot like buying weed or something. Like if you just knew a guy, you could do it, and millions of Americans did for a long time. It's one of these things that kind of existed in American culture just beneath the surface. I mean, they used to advertise, there used to be advertisements on games like these numbers that you could call to get picks, So like there's an assumption there that people want these picks to bet on them. There were also like there'd always be like broadcasters would sort of make these like weird offhanded remarks about when a game would go over a total, and it was kind of taboo to mention like, oh, that's this game just went over, but they would sort of make references to it and chuckle about it, right? So gambling on sports has always sort of existed just beneath the surface. You did not really have to dig too deep. You could find a bet, at your local bar, bowling alley, whatever,
For me, my exposure was always like a sports movie. It was always it was the Replacements. The kicker was going to get killed because he placed a bet he couldn't do, and it was Keanu Reeves in that little league baseball movie where he was
You mean? Okay, go on.
So that's my.
It's true. There's the American popular culture has always sort of had this idea of the bookie as being this like thug who would break your legs if you lost a bet, right? And the truth is that most of the bookies in America for a long time were like frat boys who started a sports book at their frat house or on their college campus, or like some old guy at the VFW hall or whatever, or like a guy at a country club in a pro shop. Like that was who was booking sports, right? It wasn't the mob or whatever. But that's all just to say that like this all existed as an underground economy for a long time. New Jersey passed a law to legalize it in their state, which, they were essentially doing that in defiance of this federal prohibition. It was banned across the country by this law called PASPA, the Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act. And they passed this law in New Jersey so that they could challenge that law. They wanted it to get, I guess Chris Christie, who was the governor at the time, had this idea that the Supreme Court would probably rule in their favor and overturn this. And so this case kind of winded its way through the courts, made it to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court found that PASPA was unconstitutional and that states should have the right to do the same thing that Nevada did and pass their own laws legalizing betting on sports. And that New Jersey was the first one because but other states were ready to go, and it just sort of spread like wildfire across the country, one state after the next.
And now we're at 40.
Well, yeah, I think it was like pretty immediately. I think Delaware was one of the first to go. And then it was like within the year, there was like maybe 10. And now we're at, I think, 39 plus DC.
Yeah. And Puerto Rico, too.
And what was the loophole that was being exploited up until that point with fantasy sports and stuff? You were able to gamble on fantasy teams?
Right. So these companies, DraftKings and FanDuel started daily fantasy sports for money. And, fantasy football had been a thing for a while. It was pretty popular. It had really grown in popularity. And in fantasy football, you like pick a lineup of players every week and you start them against another team or whatever. Daily fantasy sports was like, you'd have a new lineup every time, right? So you'd draft a new lineup for every day's slate of games. And you would play these contests for money. And they thought they were sort of operating in this gray area, saying that this was like a skill competition. This was like a contest, and you weren't gambling. You were winning a prize or whatever. And they operated in this gray area for a while and got pretty big and popular. New York, I think, shut them down first. I'm not sure if New Jersey was the next one to take them on. But in doing this, they laid the groundwork so that when PASPA fell and states started legalizing sports gambling, they saw that coming and they built the technology and the infrastructure to turn their companies into sports books pretty quickly. And because of that, they absolutely decimated all the competition, including a lot of major casino brands like MGM and Caesars and everybody else that tried to get in the game.
Yeah, because from what I understand, all of those casinos, the house always makes money, the house always wins, whatever. But that only applies to things like slots, things like roulette and whatnot. And sports books were only incorporated as just a way to, hey, you're staying at our hotel, you're also gambling here. Yeah, we also offer a sports book, but they are very much, they're not winning as often as you would think doing sports books, from what I understand. And in your article, you speak to how quick so many of these, not only legitimate casinos, but these apps are to cut off people who are making money. And that's kind of the whole game, which is really fucked up, that they're like, hey, yeah, come on and gamble. But if you're good at it, you're done. Dickhead.
Yeah, this is one of the, this is a big controversy today among gamblers, is that winning gamblers are getting kicked out, right? They're getting limited down to, in my case, I got limited down to a penny in the past year while reporting the story at one sports book. The sports books are doing this because they've discovered that it's actually pretty hard to make a lot of money booking sports. And they should have known this was the case. All they had to do was look at Nevada, because there was no real standalone sports book in Nevada. All the sports books in Nevada were owned by these big casino resorts, and they really offered as an amenity to their customers. It was like a casino would only have a sports book because they felt like the customers wanted to bet on a game, but they never thought that the sports book was going to make a profit. They thought that if somebody won some money in the sports book, they'd lose it in the dice pit or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So this was never a big, money-making proposition for any big time, casino companies. The idea that these companies were going to both win a lot of money in a small margin business like booking sports and pay pretty exorbitant tax rates that they were agreeing to in all these states and still make a big profit was ridiculous. But they probably knew that. You see that the major companies here, they're publicly traded now. And so it's really about getting their share price up more than it's about returning a profit from one quarter to the next.
So how did they miss the mark on that? Is that just because they're not, these are just tech companies without real, without the experience of, traditional bookmakers who really understand the industry, and they're just kind of in over their heads on this?
Yeah, it's hard to know. I think that is one sort of way of looking at it, is that these companies operate kind of more like a tech startup than, like a gaming company or something. But, there's another model for this business in Europe where there's a very mature industry there that's been around for a long time. It's been legal for a long time. And these companies in Europe got profitable essentially by following the same pattern of like what they call ban or bankrupt, right? Like that they either, if a gambler shows a propensity to win, they just limit their bets down to nothing. If somebody shows a propensity to lose, it's Katie bar the door. They will invite them to gamble as much as they possibly can and will incentivize them to bet as much as possible. And so they generate a lot of profit from a small number of big losers. And that's the same kind of model that we see taking shape in the United States today. The trouble is that for gamblers in America, this has never been their experience. The experience that gamblers in America had, either betting with a local bookie or betting in Nevada or even betting with offshore sports books, is that that's not the way that these sports books operated. It's not the way that people were used to being treated. And so there's a real reaction among gamblers, a negative reaction to what they're seeing happening here with some of these new modern sports books.
Is their reaction negative because it's harder for them to win, or are they genuinely concerned about Americans just absolutely getting addicted to gambling? Hey, everybody. Emil, there's something I've been struggling with lately. It's gift ideas. I don't know what the heck to give my loved ones.
I've got the perfect one for you.
You really?
MasterClass, baby.
Ooh.
So I did it myself.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously.
Let me guess, tennis?
Of course. I'm in that Serena Williams MasterClass. Incredible online learning platform.
Mm-hmm.
Loved it so much myself. I'm in there. I'm watching Serena Williams tell me about how to have mental toughness. I'm working on my ground strokes, watching these incredible classes at home.
Show you how to trash talk? That'd be a nice feature. Trash talk 101.
My trash talk is insane now.
Yeah.
But so I said, holidays are coming up.
Yeah.
I got a bunch of people who want to learn stuff.
Yeah.
The whole family's getting them.
Especially from their favorite celebrity. Just picture the celebrity your loved one wish they could hang out with. Like you. I bet you wish you could hang out with Serena Williams, and now you can with your masterclass.
That's
Me,
right.
yeah, maybe, I don't know. How do I want to better myself? I want to become a better cook, a writer, an entrepreneur, or an artist, just
Well,
like I've always
you're trying to
wanted.
build a little company.
Yeah.
Maybe we get you a little action from self-made billionaire Mark Cuban.
Oh yeah, Mark Cuban.
I know you're always trying to get more trading tips, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I can get you the Ray Dalio MasterClass.
Wow, yeah.
Learn a couple investment tips.
So, folks, MasterClass always has great offers during the holidays, sometimes up to as much as 50% off. So head over to masterclass.com/BAES for the current offer. That's up to 50% off at masterclass.com. Masterclass.com/BAES.
I don't think that the average gambler cares that much about gambling addiction, unfortunately. I think that they probably should, because I think they have a stake in it.
Yeah.
And a lot of the professional gamblers that I know do care a lot about problem gambling and have been, pretty active in trying to support measures to combat problem gambling. I think the average everyday American gambler who started gambling in the last 5 years or whatever, since post Passport, I don't think that they care that much about it. And I honestly don't think they cared that much about it limiting until it happened to them. Like this. And now that it's happening to a broader swath of people, we're now seeing a reaction. But interestingly enough, I think everybody in America, when you tell them this is happening, most people have a pretty strong reaction. They say, well, is that legal or is that fair? There is a sense that there's something fundamentally unfair about this practice. When you first tell people the sports book can basically, kick you out if you are good at this.
Right.
And the reason people think this is unfair is because these companies advertise themselves on TV as you can win, you can win at this. If you know a lot about sports, bet on it and you could win. But that's not actually what the experience is.
Yeah.
Right. At the very least, if you're going to open up a casino on your phone, you should be able to at least win the games they're advertising.
Yeah. It is pretty funny because when I've become so desensitized to these commercials, and they are everywhere. They're on TV, they're on the radio, they're in the middle of sports games now. I mean, you were talking about how announcers would just kind of subtly mention it and it was taboo. Now they've got the odds right there on the screen showing you what the line, whatever the over under shit on. And
they've completely integrated with the leagues.
It's insane.
I mean, the way they've gone about it post 2018 is psycho. The integration with the leagues, the activations from celebrities you've seen, not just athletes, every retired athlete, the Mannings, Jerome Bettis, anyone is getting in on it. But then just regular celebrities, Drake, comedians like Eric Andre and Patton Oswalt. I mean, the amount
Jamie Foxx,
Kevin
Kevin Hart,
Fox, the amount of people we get. The amount of requests we get for betting ads is crazy. And then the activations they would do, I got very jealous of. So California still does not have the gambling, but my friends in New York, because I lived in New York for a long time, my friends in New York the group chat was going crazy because I don't know if it was FanDuel or DraftKings, but they wanted people so badly that they were advertising a 30% match. So as long as you put in X amount, they'll give you 30% up to 10K. So people were just parking $10,000 in it, getting a free $3,000, betting a little bit, and then just withdrawing and being
that's so smart.
I know. And I was like, I cannot wait till they legalize it here and I get my free $3,000.
Yeah.
But this is just insane that they were offering this kind of.
It's true. And I found that people in my life who had nothing to do with gambling or sports, just completely random, were talking to me saying, yeah, I heard that I can make all this money doing this. So I'm doing this now. I'm doing matched betting, which is essentially arbitrage, where you bet both sides of a game at two different sports books at two different prices and lock up a profit. I even heard about a team of people who in around 2020, 21, when these sign up bonuses and these new customer offers were just absolutely out of control, were they formed sort of a caravan and they went across the country and they did this in every single state that had it. And they just, each one of them made 80 or 90K just in 2 weeks of driving across the country and just going state to state and doing the same thing that you're describing. So there was just this money faucet that was on for about a couple of years, that people were hoovering it all up. But, then that all went away. And now a lot of the new states that are coming on, they're not offering those same offers. I think that these sports books realized that they lost a lot of money on that stuff. The idea was that they were willing to lose all that money because they wanted customer acquisition. They wanted to grab the customers. They had this idea that if you get them, you're going to hold on to them. But it didn't turn out to be the case. FanDuel and DraftKings together got like about 75% of the market or more, and everybody else was fighting over what was left. And they found that people would come to them to get this bonus, but as soon as the bonus ran out, they left. You know what I mean? They were on to the next place. So a lot of the smaller players took a big bath on that.
Yeah, it's very tech company, right? Get everyone in, shut out competition.
I just love that their whole angle is, hey, are you a total dipshit and you don't know anything about sports? It's okay. You can gamble and make money super easy. I mean, all you got to do, download FanDuel, and then all the jargon comes up like, you can bet on, it's mind-boggling. I don't understand how they make a book on so many. One game can have like 1,000 different bets you can make. How the fuck is that?
That's hardly a joke. I mean, I saw the one ad where it's almost verbatim. You don't even need to know that much about sports. You just need a feeling. And it's like, holy shit.
Whoa, you just need a feeling?
But the truth is that they actually are preying on the people that are the most susceptible to this stuff are the people who think they know a shitload about sports.
Yeah.
And so, the biggest suckers out there are the ones who really think that because they, eat, breathe, and live and sleep, football or whatever, that means that they're somehow going to make money gambling at it. And those are the guys that I think are just going to get ground into a pulp, because I've met a lot of professional gamblers in my life. And, some of the most wildly successful sports bettors in America couldn't tell you the name of the starting lineups of any of the teams. Like, it's so data driven, and it's so just about having a model, and the model spits out a number, and you know what I mean? Like that it's not about like following sports or following sports media or like, absorbing all this like garbage that comes out of sports media. That has nothing to do with how you beat these markets. And so I think those are the people who are the most susceptible to lose a lot of money at this, because their sort of ego is tied up in it, right? Like their identity is so rooted in sports and knowing a lot about sports that they have to win it. Gambling on it is a way to prove that they're good at this or that they know a lot about it. And it drives them to continue to gamble and bet when they clearly have no edge or no ability to really beat this game.
Right. Not only that, but it kind of reminds me of like, if you were to go back in time to, Pilgrim days and introduce fucking beer and cigarette. Well, they had beer, I guess, but introduce to them like Skittles and cigarettes. Boy, those guys would just be blasting darts and popping Skittles like nobody's business. In that, it's
funny you say cigarettes.
It's poisonous to them.
You do not see cigarette commercials like this. It's not allowed.
Anybody can try cigarettes.
Yeah.
Have you ever wondered? Look how cool and easy it is to smoke a cigarette.
True, but we do see alcohol ads, and
True.
One of the interesting things I learned about while I was reporting the story was that in the 1970s, when they first tried to advertise like beer on television during sporting events or whatever else, there was a huge outcry, and people were really pissed about it. And Mothers Against Drunk Driving organized like sit-ins and stuff like that. There was like a whole protest movement to get them to stop advertising alcohol on TV. And ultimately, all those protests failed. I mean, they succeeded in that they were able to create some rules around it. Like, you can't advertise alcohol to children, you know what I mean? And you have to have these like warnings. But today, alcohol advertisements are so sort of omnipresent, we don't even notice them. In fact, a lot of times alcohol ads don't even have alcohol in them. You know what I mean? It'll just be some weird scene of like a family or something like that. It'll be a beer ad. So it does sort of it's amazing how quickly these things can just sort of become a part of, the part of the sort of world, and we get desensitized to it.
Yeah, you touched on some of these characters in the gambling world. I do want to talk about them because
they have such funny names.
Yeah, everyone should go read it. I think I found out about it from a somewhat viral tweet that called the article something like the Canterbury Tales for the gambling world, and so it's just full of all these amazing characters. It opens on I'm blanking on his name, but you guys are at a baseball game and he's live gambling, like right off the crack of the bat to try to beat.
Hell yeah, a true addict.
I didn't even know this existed. Maybe you could explain what is happening. There's a FanDuel guy in the stadium and bettors trying to beat that guy.
Yeah, so this is what they call courtsiding. And so this guy Scott, he does this a lot, and there were a number of people that do this. There was a group that I talked to who did this at Wimbledon this past year and won a lot of money.
Ooh.
Essentially, they are at the game live watching, and you can bet sports live today. All these apps allow you to bet an event live. This is another sort of technological innovation that didn't exist prior to PASPA. Really, there wasn't a lot of live betting that went on in Nevada. They didn't they didn't have this sort of dynamic, constantly changing price as the game went on. But today, that's how it works, and it's beatable because there is this guy that's in the stadium while the game is happening who is punching into a computer or on an iPad or whatever what's happening on the field, so that his feed can be faster than the broadcast feed. So essentially, like DraftKings feed is going to be faster than what you see on TV, but it's not faster than being in the ballpark. So if you can just punch your iPad quicker than that guy can punch his, you can get an edge. And there's a lot of people that are doing this, and it's killing these sports books. They fucking hate it, and they're trying to do everything they can to stop it, but they don't want to just. They could push a button and make it where you're not allowed to bet when you're in the arena, but they don't want to do that because they know that a lot of the people in the arena are going to bet and lose a lot of money, and it's a big moneymaker for them. In fact, some of these arenas around the country are putting sports books in the stadiums and in the arenas, so
Jesus.
they can't just shut it all down. So they have to sort of profile and identify who in this arena is like courtsiding us. And so I go with him to do this at a Mets game, and it was really fascinating because he has it all down to this like science. Like he knows how to read the body language of the outfielders. His whole thing is like, I just got to make the call quicker than the other guy does. Like I got to know before him, so I have to have this like, he has like these little rules about what he's looking for on the field. It was pretty funny.
How do you get the job at FanDuel where you just go to the games and punch in the numbers on the
Yeah, I want that job. He's gonna catch it. Yeah, okay. Man,
yeah, one guy told me that his angle was that he knew where that guy sat at Barclays Center in Brooklyn, and he said that he would just sit behind him and he could watch his screen, and he like literally was like behind the dude and he could see his screen.
Wow, that's
Jesus
incredible.
Christ.
Oh my God. See, that speaks to something that I've always wondered about, and I'm surprised we don't see more of it, is fan interference in games when as gambling is becoming so intertwined with sports. I'm just shocked that there aren't more instances of people trying to disrupt the games if they've got money on the line. Like if I had, I don't know, fucking 20, 40, 60 grand riding on the Lakers and they were about to lose at the very last minute and I were at the game, I would absolutely run onto the court and try to disrupt it. And I'm just shocked that doesn't. Do you think that kind of thing's going to happen more? That would be exciting.
Yeah, probably will. I mean, there have been some examples of that. There was a story a number of years ago that went around about a tennis tournament. I don't know if it was Wimbledon, but it was something in tennis where some people who were on the rail of the tennis match were accused of doing exactly what you're saying, trying to interfere with the game to, because they had a bet on a certain side and they were heckling and trying to rattle one of the players. You do see a lot of people at games now who are trying to communicate to the players what their parlays are and what, like we just need you. I think there was a video that went around recently of an NBA player who like went out and, made another 3-pointer because the guy in the courtside told him he needed another 3-pointer to hit his parlay. So, this is a thing that we're seeing more and more. What's kind of more nefarious is the examples of people who are fixing games or who are using, getting athletes to throw games or shave points or whatever. And this is kind of something that's existed forever for like over a century in sports, is people who will throw a game because of gamblers paying them to do it. And I think that's something that still goes on to this day. But because we now have, so many more sports books and so much more data and so much more technology and so many more people watching all this stuff, we're catching these people now. And so the perception from the public is, wow, this is all new. This is a new thing that's happening, when in reality, it's a thing that's always been happening. What's new is that these people are now getting busted.
Right.
Could you just do a quick rundown of a parlay? Because I feel that's how they're making a lot of money on these, right?
Yeah, Parlez-vous gambling.
Well, traditionally a parlay is just a bunch, when you take a bunch of the bets that you want to make and you put them into one bet, so you get a bigger price. And in theory, what's happening is that if you win one bet, you take your bet and all the winnings and roll them over to the next bet, and it's sort of like letting it ride, So the more bets you put into your parlay, the bigger the payout, because the bigger the bet on that last leg of the parlay. Thing is, you could do this all on games that are all happening at the same time. And today, these new sports books offer what they call same game parlays, where you can actually parlay events that are all within the same game. So you can parlay the winner of the game with. I mean, there's this famous scene in Uncut Gems where Howard Ratner, Adam Sandler's character, makes this ridiculous parlay, and it's sort of the big, the climactic scene of the movie is him sweating this parlay at the end of the movie. But it's all these things that are supposed to happen in the same game, like this team wins the tip, this guy gets this many assists, this guy gets this many points, this team wins, and you parlay all those things together into the same game and get a big payout. The reason people like this is because people like the idea of betting a little and winning a lot. They like the idea of a lottery ticket. They don't want to risk very much money, but they want to win a lot of money. The problem is that these bets are incredibly hard to win, and the payout you get at the end is not the true fair payout of what you should get. There's a big chunk that's being taken out by the sports book, but they know that most of us can't do the math to figure that out. We're just so blown away by how much money we're winning when we potentially win one of these things. And so these parlays are really grinding people up. It's a big sucker bet that I think it's making the sports books a lot of money, but it's driven by people's desire to not put much money at risk.
Yeah, right. I think I'd be good at this, actually. The more I blacked out about the part about odds and stuff. All I heard was, hey, I got a shot to win big from a small thing. But seriously, though, folks, I've heard that, or I read that pushing, a lot of these companies are intentionally pushing parlays onto customers, encouraging them to make these bets, because the more legs are added to a parlay, obviously the lower the odds are for them to hit. And they're so reliable that they can even now they can calculate these parlays, what the sports books will make from them, into their profits before they're even completed. It's really evil and nefarious, if you ask me.
Yeah, or it's like, incredibly smart on their part. I mean, from their point of view, it's like great because they are offering a product that people want.
Yeah.
That's bad for them. You know what I mean? Like that's the problem is that the consumer in this particular market is not a very discriminating consumer. They're not price conscious at all. They don't really care that, the people that they have are looking for kind of ridiculous things. Like, they want these things that are called, a lot of gamblers want boosts. They want a sports book to give them like a little bit of an extra sugar on top when they make these bets, even with that extra sugar on top, they're still getting a bad price. If they just shopped around and went to the sports book down the street, they'd see they could get a better price down the street. So they're dealing with a sort of a customer base that really it is indiscriminate. I mean, they don't care about price at all. And if they were more price sensitive, then it would be harder for these sports books to, make a lot of money off these products. But they're cleaning up because this is what people love to do. They love to stack up big parlays, and when somebody hits one of these things, the sports book is going to tweet it out and promote it. Like it's just like at a casino showing the picture of the person that won the slot jackpot or whatever, because it's great. It's like free PR for them. Like, look, somebody actually won, so come on over and bet.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're not only doing that, they're incentivizing all these problem gamblers in the same way they would the old school casino. You have a story of, there's no way I'm going to remember her name, but maybe it was the amateur professional boxer who ended up getting hurt and then turning to gambling. She was getting the same kind of rush from the boxing ring as she was with betting, and she kind of like almost doesn't even realize her own problem because she's taking people out to the free dinners and all these perks, and people are going, how much do you play? This is insane.
That's the funny part is when they treat you like a high roller, it's because you're actually a big loser.
Yeah.
You're losing so much.
I had this story that got cut out of the piece. I went to New York to a party that one of these sports books threw for their VIPs, and it was during a Knicks game, but it was at like a bar near Madison Square Garden. And so I went to this thing with a guy who was a VIP at this sports book. He was invited. He took me as his guest. And this party was like full of all these VIP players and these hosts. And a host is like someone who works for the sports book whose job is to like cater to these VIPs, get them the things that they want, give them, gifts, take them on golf trips and things like that to keep them betting. And I was chatting with one of these hosts and I said, if I was a VIP and what would it take for me to get tickets to like a game, to like a Knicks game? And he goes, well, we have, our sportsbook has a suite at MSG, but I'm just going to tell you, if you ever find yourself in our suite, at Madison Square Garden during a Knicks playoff game, that is just not a place that you want to be. And
Oh,
what I
bummer.
took his meaning to me is that if you're in that suite, that means you lost a lot of fucking money,
Yeah.
right? Like that's the only way you're going to get that ticket is if you are a big time loser. So I'd written that in the piece, but ended up this piece was too long and it got cut out. But I thought that was a really revealing moment because that is the truth. Like the like 80% of the profits comes from like less than 10% of the players. And they're what they call high value players, people that bet lots and lots of money. And some of those people are rich and can afford to lose it, but most of them are just people who are total losers and are completely addicted, and that's where a lot of these profits are coming from. And they incentivize them to keep, if you're a VIP, you don't get a bonus or you don't get any sort of incentive stuff. You don't get free stuff unless you're depositing more money. Like once you start winning, you're not a VIP anymore. They stop talking to you. But if your account keeps going to zero, then they keep calling you to deposit more money. And that's where the offers come in. That's what Liz, the boxer who I have in the piece, that's what she talks about is how, they made her feel so great. They kept offering her all these things and giving her all this free stuff. And it wasn't until later that she recognized, like, none of this stuff is free. I'm paying for all of this. Man.
Yeah.
Like my life is ruined and I'm getting like these free dinners and jewelry and stuff like that. But I paid for all this.
Damn,
Yeah.
there was this one loser. Sorry. There was this one loser though, who I think it was DraftKings. He's now suing them because he had never gambled in his life. And he saw an ad and downloaded the thing, and he gambled away $1 million of his family's savings that they obviously could not afford to lose. And I believe the crux of his lawsuit states that their failsafes failed, essentially, because I believe there are rules in place where
they're supposed to be checking your income.
Yeah, they're supposed to be checking. You're supposed to submit like a W-2 or something to show that this isn't all the money you've got. His poor wife, yeah, she was quoted as saying like he never gambled before. Now,
right, because the numbers
hooked on it.
obviously wouldn't add up if you're looking at the income, and this guy's just like chucking his kid's college fund into the app.
He's a pilgrim with cigarettes.
Yeah, we're going to see more and more of these stories too. There was another one in Jacksonville where a guy who worked for the Jacksonville Jaguars stole millions of dollars from the Jacksonville Jaguars to gamble, and now he's suing FanDuel or whoever, saying it's some similar things like, well, they should have known that I was stealing this money because they're supposed to be checking. It's amazing how little they actually follow the very few regulations that are set for them. And one of the things that is a problem in this sort of construct that we have now in America with sports betting is that it's every state has their own rules. And when you hear an ad on the radio for sports betting and you hear at the end, they start reading all these phone numbers out, like there's like 12, 13 phone numbers every day. That's because every state has their own gambling hotline. There's not just one hotline in America. It's every state has their own. For some reason, every state wants to do that work themselves. Every state has different regulations. They have different groups of people who are regulating and enforcing these laws. They have different, like it's so weird how like we have yet to come up with sort of a uniform set of rules around this stuff. In some states, there's really no attention being paid at all to problem gambling or any of these kinds of concerns, because in some states, it's all been put right on the sports. The state has basically said to the sports book, you take care of that. And in other states, they're saying, we'll take care of it and you will have to, answer to us. So it's not the same everywhere you go. But it's true that like they have a responsibility to check to make sure that you have a source of funds, just like when you're borrowing money to buy a house or something like that. But they do not do a good job of this. In some cases, they don't do it at all. There's just so many stories now of people who are gambling lots and lots of money that they clearly were embezzling or stealing or didn't have. And the sports book or the casino ostensibly was checking on this, but didn't care. And I think that's just going to continue. I mean, this has been going on. This was a problem in the casino industry for many years. Now it's going to be a problem in the sportsbook industry because they're trying to generate their profits from a small number of high dollar losers rather than trying to grind it out from a lot of people who are gambling responsibly, just betting $100 or whatever. They don't want to do that because their margin's like 4% and they don't want to make $4. They want to make $4 million. So they got to find people who are going to bet a shitload of money. And that's why we're going to continue to see these kinds of problems.
It's also important to note, a bit differently from the casinos, is that these tech companies have an insane amount of data on you. And they're able to see when you're most likely to be checking your account balance. Because we've talked about how some of these more successful gamblers are banned from the app. I've seen some reports of successful gamblers trying to mimic behavior
Yeah.
of losers, and they'll like set their alarm for the middle of the night to check their account at 2 a.m. So they're like, "Ooh, this guy might be a sucker. We got to get."
Yeah.
So it's just kind of crazy that they can kind of algorithmically feed you whatever it is, a little bonus to gamble on, a little like alert. So it's just so much more insidious, the way they kind of have all this access to the data about you.
And it throws a quick couple stats out there, just speaking to all this money sloshing around. Americans have put up $500 billion in gambles since 2018. And it's gotten so bad that apparently for every dollar gambled, household savings is depleted by $2. And with that, you can guess correctly that we're seeing rising rates in young people getting addicted to gambling, younger people calling these gambling hotlines. Gamblers Anonymous has reported that they've got more people coming to meetings than ever before. There's a higher incidence of domestic abuse, domestic violence because of people losing their life savings, going bankrupt, and probably, unfortunately, suicides. It's really sad and really wild how instead of getting regulated, especially when it comes to like sports broadcasting and advertising, it's almost like the opposite has happened. And they've just somehow been able to completely open the spigot. Whereas, like I wonder, do you think rather that we're going to reach a point where some kind of group is going to step up and say, enough is enough. We need to really do something about the way that they're advertising, the frequency with which they're advertising, the messages that they're sending, the incorporation into sports. Because, like you can't do cigarette ads anymore. You can't drink in drinking advertisements. There are so many other rules around all these other vices, except for gambling.
Yeah, well, I think that you had to think about why these states all opened their doors to sports betting in the first place. And it was to fill budget holes, right? Like there was, we're living in an era where, where governments are looking for any way to pay for things other than to tax people. And so, this seemed like a gift where you see these companies come in and say, give us sports betting. People are already doing it, with on the black market. So we can regulate it. It can be safer and we can pay a tax on it. And you can use those taxes to do good things, hire cops and nurses and build roads or whatever, build schools and do whatever you want with it. But we'll pay you all this tax revenue. The problem, though, is that those revenues have fallen short in a lot of states of where they originally projected them to be because they're just not making the kind of money that they thought they were going to make. And it's making these states think twice about the cost of having this versus what they thought they were going to get out of it. In some states, like in New York, though, where the tax rates are really high, New York has made billions of dollars in tax revenue off of sports betting, and they're loving it. You know what I mean? Like the state government is loving that they're getting all this money, and they're not going to turn it around because they have a very high tax regime here. But a lot of these states don't. They've been able to get very, very much more reasonable, for lack of a better term, tax rates put on them. What's interesting is that the sportsbook companies, the major companies like FanDuel and DraftKings, they're now going to these same state legislators and saying, okay, so we didn't make as much money as we thought we were going to make for you guys. We didn't pay as much in taxes as we thought. But if you allow us to turn the app into a casino and we have mobile slot machines and mobile, casino games on the app, then we can definitely hit our numbers. Then then you don't got to worry about it. We're going to make so much money for you guys. And I saw them give one of these presentations to a group of legislators, and the presentation was really just a slideshow of like, here's how many cops that you can hire with this money. Here's how many nurses that you can hire with this. This is how many potholes you can fill. Like that's what the whole thing was. So all you got to do is let us flip this switch that turns the sportsbook into a casino, and boom, we were going to get all this money. So that's what I think the future looks like, and I think it's pretty scary.
Yeah, that's what I really want to talk about, because with all this coverage of the sports betting, I feel like you were the first person I've seen to really highlight this next step. And it really freaked me out that they basically, and there's I hope I can find it. There's an insane quote from, I believe it's Roxy Roxborough, which is just just an incredible name. But he said, America can survive sports betting. It survived illegal betting for years. Whether it can survive a casino on everyone's phone, that I can't answer. That might be the tipping point. And the fact that they're just like, wow, we're getting hosed on this sports betting thing. We got to turn everyone's phone into a fucking slot machine is just so dark.
One of their things is also, well, hey, if you don't legalize this, people are just going to turn to the black market. But that's fucking wrong, because the black market used to be a place where you had to go physically walk to and pay in cash and not have it on your fucking phone in your pocket 24/7 to gamble on thousands of different lines or whatever you call it for every fucking inning or every quarter or every at bat or every shot. So fuck you, DraftKings.
It's true. It's a hobby horse. It's like a boogeyman that they're using to scare legislators into giving them whatever they want. But the other thing that's interesting about the black market is that the black market, for lack of a better term, also never offered 50,000 bets a day. You know, they didn't they didn't offer same game parlays. When you bet with an offshore bookie or you bet in Vegas, you just bet on who was going to win the game. You know what I mean? You're just betting on the total. You didn't have all these crazy bets either. So it made it a lot. In some ways, it's like we'd be better off to go back to that model than the one that we currently have.
Yes.
But I do want to say this about casino gambling, because one of the things that I think is weird and a little bit counterintuitive about this shift is that we've actually had casino gambling in over 40 states for a long time in America, right? So like almost every state has a brick and mortar casino. Casino gambling used to be something you could only do in Nevada and then in Atlantic City. Now you could do it kind of everywhere. And so it's weird when you hear Roxy's quote to think like, well, why is this such a like a crossing the Rubicon kind of moment when like we've had this for so long? And I think your point that you were just making about like it being on a phone versus having to do it in person is kind of the key point here, which is that, you know, that the technology here, whether we're talking about betting on sports or betting on casino stuff, is like it's all like Fortnite, you know what I mean? It's all like Candy Crush. It's incredibly addictive. It's like it's the technology here is learning how to make us addicted to it, and the accessibility of it and the convenience of it is going to kill us, you know? So like the way that I see people on the highway playing Candy Crush on their phone while they're fucking driving, like imagine now that they're doing that and they're not only risking killing somebody by crashing their car, but also blowing their kids' college fund at the same time. Like, you know, we just sort of add on the social ills here. So I think that's what Roxy's saying he's worried about, is that, you know, and the other thing about sports betting that's key is sports betting is a type of gambling that's kind of winnable, right? It's like when you make a bet with on sports, you're betting against the bookmaker. The bookmaker's taking the other side of the bet. You could win. When you make a bet on a slot machine, the slot machine is programmed to return 97% of what's put in it and keep 3% for itself. Its margins are fixed, and you can't change that. When you play craps, the odds are fixed on the table. The house's edge will play itself out over time. But sports is very dynamic, and you can't actually win. A sports book can actually lose money. So in a way, like that's a form of gambling that I think when he says America could survive it, I think he also means that Americans can survive this form of gambling far better than they can the rapid expansion of these kind of the fixed, the types of gambling where it's essentially rigged for the house and there's no way to win.
I just can't imagine being the type of person to play legalized, real, legitimate, digital, on your phone slot machines. That's mind-boggling to me.
Oh, I'm just picturing that. That video of the old people in the casino.
Just all
mindlessly tapping the thing. All of us.
I just would push back on that and say that, like, I fuck around on my phone all the time. Like, I'm insanely addicted to my phone, and I play chess on it. I look at Twitter and Instagram, and like, there's a lot of dumb games on my phone that I cannot seem to shake, and I have to actually delete the thing off of my phone to get myself to stop doing it. So I actually think that we are all incredibly susceptible to addictive, types of things on our phones. And so the idea that we would then be playing something for money, all I'm saying is I don't think any of us are safe. I think none of us are safe.
We've seen some of this already. I feel like a precursor to this was everyone getting on Robinhood during the pandemic and just like YOLOing options trades and being like, fuck it.
That is safe though.
And I think, I want to ask like how far off you feel we are from them just turning on the mobile casinos, but I it's impossible to answer. But it's like it doesn't look good right now, right? We're heading into a Trump administration where it seems like the scam economy is the economy, right? It feels very similar to like I'm sure there's an overlap in people going crazy on parlays and also getting on pump.fun to check out the latest meme coin and do all these weird alt crypto coins and stuff. It's like people are just these are the new ways to make money. It's crazy.
Yeah. Do we need God?
I think we're probably farther down the road than you would think. Already there's 6 states that have passed laws that allow some form of mobile casino gambling, I should say. But the other thing that I don't talk about in the story that's happening right now is there's a lot of these new companies who are starting sports books that are completely unregulated, unlicensed, and they're following what's called the sweepstakes model. So the idea behind the sports book is that you buy some sort of like chip or play money, and you're rewarded with some sort of real money chips that you can then gamble. And it's all based on the same law that protects things like a McDonald's sweepstakes or whatever, like the Monopoly game you would play at McDonald's. And they're saying that they think that the sweepstakes law allows them to run these kinds of casinos. And some of these companies are getting very, very big, very fast. And they're essentially just like FanDuel and DraftKings with daily fantasy sports, or with New Jersey passing. They're essentially daring a state, saying, come and prosecute us. They want that because they know that if they can prosecute, they get it into court, they can build a big case, they might even win one. What's happening is that a lot of states are now thinking maybe we shouldn't prosecute them. Maybe we should actually start to regulate those types of casinos as well. And the existing gambling companies are super nervous about this, right? They're so worried because they think that now the competition is going to be all over the place. The other thing that's happening is there are crypto sports books and crypto casinos that are popping up, and
Of course.
they're functioning sort of side by side with these places too. If you go on Google in a lot of states and you just Google like legal sports book in California, where you live, where there are no legal sports books, what you're going to get at the top of your list are a bunch of crypto sports books that say legal to bet in California. And so these crypto sports books are taking up a lot of market share too right now, and they're getting really big, and they don't have any of the regulations. They don't have any of the oversight. They don't have any of the protections for customers. They aren't doing anything with responsible gambling. So I think this is already happening. And in terms of the scam economy, I think that they're just going to figure out how they nibble around the edges of this big sports betting pie until they can just gobble the whole thing up.
Jesus Christ. It's also, I'm just thinking about like kids getting a hold of I feel like parents will let their kid use the credit card for the Fortnite or whatever.
Yeah, for the Fortnite or whatever. Or
for the
Roblox
Fortnite
bucks.
skins or
Yeah,
whatever
yeah.
the fuck. As soon as kids start putting in the credit card for the mobile casino and just ripping slots on.
I would rather my kids start smoking than start gambling. Truly. At least one is, I don't know, I feel like one is easier to quit. And that's, folks, if you got a problem out there, call 1-800-GAMBLER, right? They'll teach you how to do it right.
I don't know, man. I mean, my dad used to take me to the racetrack when I was a little kid. Like I said in the beginning of this show, I grew up around a lot of this stuff. I think that there's a way to do this stuff responsibly. And I think that the problem is not ingrained in the actual activity. It's in these publicly traded corporations now who have entered into this world they knew nothing about, and the only way they can figure to make a profit is by absolutely eating people alive. And I think the truth is that this is a business that existed for a long time without a lot of people like yourselves even knowing it existed. You know what I'm saying? Where a lot of people were able to just sort of bet, and it was not something that created this hysteria around it. Now that it's so out there and in the zeitgeist the way that it is, everybody's sort of having a reaction to it, and they're saying like, oh, this thing, gambling, is really fucking bad and we should purge it out of our society. I actually think that we should look at who's really creating this problem, and I think there's a few companies here who are creating this problem because they can't figure out any other way to make money other than to essentially steal it from the most vulnerable people. But I don't think that means that that's the only way that people can bet on sports. There's a lot of sports books that operate on a completely different model, who aren't out there trying to gouge 80% of their profits from 10% of their players. And I think there's a world where this can exist and be legal and be regulated and people can do it responsibly. But I don't think that we're living in that world right now. I
really appreciate your pro responsible gambling stance. It's not something you hear often. So I mean, what does that look like to you? Is that kind of going back to a pre-PASPA era where it's or pre the repeal of PASPA, where it's it's all kind of siloed in one state, or and you got to use cash, or going back to that, or is there some new digital age?
Yeah, I'm super pessimistic. I mean, I think that the toothpaste is out of the tube, unfortunately. I
Yeah.
actually don't think, like, I could sit here and imagine what a perfect model or perfect world look. I don't know that
Yeah.
we'll ever get to it. I do think that there are some sports books who operate a different type of business model, that are trying to make their profits on lower margins, on trying to take, operating on volume. There's sports books offshore that are able to make a lot of profit without, doing any of this kind of whatever questionable, behavior. But I think that what we're going to see is that we will see more mobile casinos in the future. We will see, that sort of pivot into that world. What I hope is that the big companies like FanDuel and DraftKings, if they get mobile casino all across the country and they just decide, well, this is our shiny object, they may leave sports betting to people who actually want to book sports, to people who actually want to bet on it. But it won't be good for society. I mean, we don't need to have a bunch of mobile casino companies in America. So I think things will have to get bad or worse, before they could get better, because you're going to have to generate that sort of public outcry and pushback on this stuff to tell states, hey, you know what? All that tax revenue that you're generating from this activity, you should give it all back because it's actually hurting us. That's like a thing I don't think I've ever seen happen before. And if it ever does happen with this, it'll only mean that things got really fucking bad. So unfortunately, I'm a little bit pessimistic on this.
Yeah,
Well-
I mean, I think would the closest thing be kind of the tobacco industry, them getting sued by these states saying, hey, you're causing us to spend all this money in healthcare expenses because of your product, which it's a good thing that happened, but that took maybe millions of people getting cancer from these products for that kind of thing to happen.
Right.
We are going to have to head to. Do you have any maybe responsible gambling tips for us before? How I watch a lot of tennis. How can I get into tennis gambling without my wife leaving me?
I mean, I think that, like, the best thing I could tell you is, like, don't bet money that if you lose that it feels bad. You know what I mean? Like,
Okay.
look, I think that gambling is like, it's like if you can have a glass of wine with dinner or whatever. I interviewed this person once for my podcast who gave me the best thing on this. She was like, look, I go snowboarding, right? And she said, I'll go away for a weekend. I'll go snowboarding. I'll spend, $500 or something on lift tickets. I've got equipment or whatever. At the end of the day, over the course of that weekend, all I did was go down a hill really fast a few times, but I had a good time and it cost me $500. Nobody ever thinks like there's something wrong with me or that I'm a degenerate or that I'm a sicko because I go snowboarding on the weekend. I think you should think about it like that. You should gamble how much money that actually makes it fun for you, and that if you lose it, you don't feel like you did anything more than just, had a good time.
Yeah, but for me, it's the thrill. A glass of wine at dinner. No, I want to drink 2 bottles. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I want to be flying.
Well, like I said, whatever it takes for you to feel like you're having fun, that's what you should put in it. You shouldn't think twice about it.
Yeah.
Well, we thank you so much for your time and your expertise. It's a very illuminating topic. It's definitely a big bummer in many ways, and I certainly hope it makes anybody out there, it causes people out there to think twice before they find themselves being susceptible to these ads promising quick, easy money if you just place a bet based on your gut feeling. Also, is there anything you'd like to plug?
No, I mean, people can find me I have a website, davidhillonline.com, where there's links to stuff I've written. I have a book that you already mentioned called The Vapors. Thanks for talking about that. It makes a great Christmas present for that dad or uncle in your life. It seems to be very popular with people's dads. But really, I hope that folks would check it out if you want to learn more about Hot Springs, Arkansas. And and I'm on Twitter at DaveHill77.
And we'll link to the article so people can check it out too. It'll be in the description of this. Thanks so much for coming on. Really appreciate your kind of take on all this. It was really great, really illuminating.
Thanks a lot. It was really a lot of fun.
Also, I just got to say, I did bet $50 that this episode would go 60 minutes, and it looks like I won. So I cleaned up. And the parlay was that Emil would look handsome. And it looks like I won that second leg of the parlay.
Bet.
Yeah.
You can Venmo me I cut it, David.
Okay, cool. Sounds good. All right. Thank you very much, David.
Thank you so much, David.